It is Wednesday night, September 8th. You know what that means. It was one of the most anticipated AEW Dynamites in their short company history, which means it's one of the most anticipated post AEW Dynamite podcasts here on Wrestling Inc. I'm Justin LaBar alongside my partner in crime, Alfred Konuwa. Follow him on Twitter at This Is Nasty. Read him on Forbes.com. Alfred, we have plenty to fill the hour.
Absolutely. And this is the most anticipated post AEW podcast. So, we got to get a little more credit to that, but it's good to be here. And I'm very excited to talk about this show because it's definitely action packed. There is a lot to talk about. And I thought it was, for the most part, a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of fun. Of course, it's the fallout from All Out. AEW's a big pay-per-view this past Sunday. Certainly a ton of headlines. There was a post-podcast on it Sunday night here in Wrestling Inc. We touched on a little bit, again, Monday night after Raw. But, of course, Alfred and I are going to dive into all the aftermath of what really started to develop as we started getting the first signals and signs of who these new arrivals, what their first storylines and opponents will be. We have new storylines and controversy popping up. So a lot to unpack in a very hot show coming from Cincinnati, Ohio. But Alfred, before we do that, let's take a look at some news that's going on in the world of pro wrestling, stretching across both AEW, the wrestling world, and then, of course, WWE. The first one dealing with WWE, but a serious and a real-life situation. Looks like it's going to have a happy ending, but that being Paul Triple H Levesque undergoing a heart surgery after a cardiac event. Now, WWE did publicize this. They put out a press release. They talked about it on social media, confirming that the WWE executive, he underwent a successful procedure today at Yale New Haven Hospital in New Haven, Connecticut. It was noted that the operation was needed after a cardiac event was caused by what they said is a genetic heart issue, and he is expected to make a full recovery. So, obviously good that he's going to be okay. And just in a time right now where it seems like there's just no real positive WWE headlines, work or otherwise.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm just glad that this whole thing was kind of under wraps until we found out that he's going to be, positive recovery, because, I'm just glad that when I first heard the news that he had a heart procedure, you get a little nervous and you wonder what's happening and if he's going to be okay. But to read that he's going to make a full recovery is really good, so that no speculation runs wild. And you're absolutely right in terms of all the news, not only with WWE, but with NXT in particular. And Paul Levesque, Triple H kind of being on the wrong end of a lot of headlines. And this is just another one that just kind of go along with it. So I'm just glad that he's doing okay and that he's happy and that he's healthy. And hopefully, the day is darkest before the dawn. So this is probably the worst it's going to get. And for the next year, even more in 10 years, NXT and Triple H are going to be on the upwards and on the mend.
Yeah, and what you said is facts. It's just in terms of the timing right now with, again, just not a lot. It's not very, if you look at a certain population of wrestling fans online, how the headlines are and what just the general state is of departures, big names going to the competition. Right now, it doesn't feel too cool to be Team WWE. But I do, and I retweeted somebody on Twitter, and I just want to say this again. Yeah, the timing's there of NXT and changes, and is this Triple H's NXT anymore? And all that stuff. I get it. You're nobody's the first person to think of that. So just lay off what caused Triple H to have a heart problem or a broken heart. Like, I saw a lot of really bad, embarrassing, and quite frankly, just disrespectful attempts to be funny on Twitter when this news broke. And come on,
yeah, and that's unfortunate because I did the opposite. As soon as I heard about the heart issue, I was just like, man, all this bullshit about, politics and backstage and who's in power just meant nothing to me in that moment. I was like, wow, this is an actual human being. It kind of reminded me that all these figures that we always talk about, as entertaining as salacious as it is to talk about this kind of stuff, when real life stuff happens, I just wish more people would kind of realize, okay, this is human beings we're dealing with, instead of saying, oh, this is another way that we can make this controversial.
Yeah, I mean, he's a husband, he's a father to daughters, to little girls. So let's remember sometimes we argue about a predetermined genre of sports entertainment. Let's make sure we divide the line of what's real life and what's not, and what's worth getting emotional over. All right, as I said, kind of uncool to be Team WWE these days, and the hits just keep on coming. And the latest being some WWE officials reportedly having heat over contract situations. Now, of course, if you've been paying attention, you've seen Adam Cole show up in leave WWE's world and show up in AEW. We've seen Bryan Danielson. We've seen Malachi Black. We've seen a host of legends jump over. There's even a rumor coming out of Fightful Select that potentially Kevin Owens could be one, that his contract actually is going to end up being expired this January, which is about a year sooner than a lot of people were led to believe. But supposedly his contract was restructured as a result of the pandemic and different financial choices. So having said all of that, in an update, Fightful Select also has a report saying there's significant heat in relation to people, quote, falling asleep at the wheel, Alfred, with the fact that details and planning of NXT contracts and just keeping tabs on it. And remember, Malachi Black may be one of the more embarrassing ones if you're WWE in the office, that the fact that they didn't even realize that his non-compete was only a 30-day non-compete, it was still the NXT non-compete, so to speak, and they never changed it to the 90-day. And this is a guy who'd been on the main roster for a couple years, and just nobody happened to dot that I, cross that T. So it seems to be just, again, kind of a little bit of just chaos, it seems, in the WWE office, of keeping track of who's where and what's where, and then never mind morale seemingly being floundering.
Yeah, and that's unacceptable to the amount of times that this has happened. If this happens once, the Aleister Black thing that happened when he went from Aleister to Malachi Black within the span of 30 days, I thought, man, that's unacceptable. But the fact that this has happened multiple times with 3 people now who are at the level of star power they are in terms of some of your top stars, whether it be on NXT or WWE, and people who absolutely AEW would love to have, I think is unacceptable for WWE to be going through this in terms of a company at the level that they are. So I can only imagine the heads that might be rolling. And, I'd never want to see somebody lose their job. But I remember we had heard after the Aleister Black thing happened that Kenyon Seaman, I believe, was the individual who lost his job over this. And I mean, this is something that really cannot happen in terms of WWE, especially with their top flight free agents, especially in a time like now with, AEW presenting competition. Absolutely cannot happen once, let alone 3 times. So something needs to change infrastructurally for WWE.
Yeah. And, again, right now it's I think it was Russell Votes made a very very poignant tweet earlier today saying it's not, the story is it's starting to become not who's going to leave WWE, but who's actually going to stay when their contract expires. And that's just a different way to look at it right now. But I got to ask you, because you and I haven't got to talk in a couple weeks actually. We weren't together last Wednesday, and obviously a lot's transpired this past week. We knew all these names were rumored. Obviously, we talked about CM Punk. We knew Bryan was rumored. We knew there was a potential for Adam Cole to end up in AEW. And I understand Tony Khan saying there is no salary cap to the roster. There is no numerical limit of I can only have 100 guys or whatever the number is. You just acquire good talent when you have an opportunity, which is fair. You always want your roster to be evolving, and if there's a talent out there that can help you, if you have the means to get them, and AEW has all the financial means and they have the great distribution. But I still have to believe, Alfred, and you're a numbers guy, you still have to look at this surge of free agency as a bubble, like you would look at the real estate bubble, like you would look at a bubble for certain types of stocks. Eventually it just has to pop. Eventually there has to be a pop to it. You cannot, you can't turn around and if AEW, and I'm making this number up, but I'd love to sit and count it. If AEW has 60 wrestlers under contract right now, if you wake up in 6-8 months and all of a sudden now you have 100 all under the guise of, well, we just couldn't turn away. That was a really good young talent who we could work them through dark and get them up through rising. And then Kevin Owens, because we got to have him. You only have so many. I guess Dark and Elevation can be as long as you want it to be, and you can. They are good at sneaking 30 or 45-second pre-tape promos in just to remind of a story. But at some point, the bubble has to pop.
100%. And I think it's on its way to doing just that. And economically, there's also diminishing marginal returns where you're only going to get so much added value of the certain types of guys that you bring in. And we're already starting to see that with CM Punk and AEW Rampage. If you've seen these last 2 weeks, I'm shocked at the number of people who have kind of fled from AEW Rampage since that debut. No, I did not expect them to do $1 million every single week, but for a show that is promoted as a show, that has had CM Punk's presence on it, that has had some top flight, top tier wrestlers on it, the fact that he got that 1.1 million, and then now we're at 696, where it's under 700,000. I mean, it lost to NXT this past week, if you want to get technical to it. And I do think that there is a limit to the amount of people that AEW continues to stockpile and sign before, the narrative develops that fans are starting to have backlash against all these former WWE guys, who a lot of whom are killing it. But B, and I think more importantly, the locker room, because we talk about how WWE is the uncool company right now, but the grass is always greener on the other side. And once it's contract time, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people within that AEW locker room who feel that they have not been utilized to their best ability, that they have not been prioritized because of the former WWE guys who are now kind of positioned as top stars. And that's something that AEW is going to have to tread lightly doing.
Sure. And let me be clear. Like, this is a super exciting time. I was very excited to watch Dynamite, and I got a lot to say about Dynamite, a lot of it positive. So I don't want fans to think that I'm complaining about the boom that we've been waiting for 20, or not even a boom, but just the competition that we've really been waiting for 20 years. WWE, it's not new in the last 2 years that WWE has been complacent or has really handcuffed talent. That's not a new story. The story is that they have now there's actual competition for this talent to go, okay, I don't have to put up with this anymore. I have another place I can go and make equal, if not better, money, and have, be seen by a pretty good number of eyes. That's continuing to overall build. So I'm very excited, but it is something to look at big picture. And to what Alfred said, eventually the AEW originals, their contracts are going to come up, and they're going to go, well, my TV time's really gotten slashed since A, B, and C came in. So, and then there is disgruntledness. So there is going to finally be, people who do get released, don't get their contracts renewed, don't get the money they want, do a shoot interview. It's going to be a fun time to watch.
Man, AEW shoot interviews are coming, man. I can't wait. No, but I agree with you. It's great for the business. This is always what people had said in terms of competition. And I love the fact that wrestlers now have other places to go and they have some leverage. It's great to see.
Well, and I will say this, it does seem Tony Khan, and I mean, I'm sure, he's even referenced, admiring Vince, especially Vince in the old days, in the earlier days. It does seem right now Tony Khan obviously is super accessible. We hear the horror stories about, talent who are just trying to get on TV, trying to get out of catering, and they wait hours and sometimes weeks, spending hours outside of Vince's office and can't get through to him. And when they do get through to him, it's a very lukewarm, interaction or response to their pitches. To Tony's credit, he does seem like he's making himself accessible to everybody, whether you are CM Punk or whether you are, pick low level marginal talent. He listens to let's see if that can maintain as your company grows. Can he sustain that type of level? So to his credit, as it does start to, if and when guys and girls do get disgruntled or do start to question, hey, where's my TV time? Where's my booking? It does feel like there at least would be a better chance for lines of communication and lines of, middle ground being found to happen. Jody Shauna Jenkins, 5 Canadian. If your revenues continue to grow, then you absolutely continue to add key players. In theory, as you get better, the bottom line will grow. Well, true. You Jody Shauna Jenkins, if their pay-per-view numbers are going to continue to do better because they have more of these big names that do attract a different audience, or an audience that wants to see them in fresh matchups. Certainly All Out's probably the best pay-per-view they've ever done. That will increase revenue. If they can continue to sell these venues out really well. But mind you, they're only, it's not like they do house shows. It's not like they do an extra bit of touring. They don't have an AEW network. So it's not like they're monetizing off their library that's continuing to grow each week as they tape all this hours of content. So I mean, they have revenue, but it's certainly not as many streams as by comparison to WWE. So it is going to be interesting to see how quick can the revenue go up to keep pace with the expanding locker room.
Right. And I don't think the question even is, can they add key players? They absolutely can, especially with the money that they're making. I think they're in good position to continue to add as many free agents as they want. I don't think the issue is whether or not they can. I think it is whether or not it's feasible to feature them on television. You could already tell with the roster that they have right now, people are cycled in and out, and somebody gets 3 weeks on TV and then they're gone for a while. And it is hard for them to sustain. So as they get more TV time, I think that's going to decide whether or not they should be able to add key players. But I think with 3 hours of TV a week, you might be at your limit in terms of being able to consistently feature the amount of people they want.
Well, and if their viewership continues to grow, and they do continue to position and build and have the company with these major names. I will say when they come back around for TV rights, they could get a whole lot of rights from they could get a whole lot of good TV rights from TNT and TBS.
Warner Media.
So that's something to keep an eye on too.
Absolutely. And it's not going to just be Warner Media. Content is king right now. And you've got a company that's doing this well in 18 to 49. It's going to be more than just Warner Media. There's a lot of streaming services looking to really establish themselves. And that pro wrestling audience, especially AEW's audience, very loyal, is going to travel with it. There's a lot of value there. So it's going to be some good arms races having to have for AEW and even WWE, of course.
All right. And finally, let's take a look at the PWI, Pro Wrestling Illustrated. It's put out their top 500 for 2021, and your number one ranked is your AEW World Champion Kenny Omega. And of course, this is always fun. This always Alfred brings about a ton of debate and controversy. Number two was the head of the table, the Tribal Chief Roman Reigns. We also had Bobby Lashley up there, Drew McIntyre, Kota Ibushi, Jon Moxley, Will Ospreay, Finn Balor. So a mix of names for the different companies and around the world. But of course, that's the debate of the AEW and the WWE fans who tend to be split is Kenny Omega or Roman Reigns. Do you have any issue with this 1-2?
No, and I like the fact that there was a bit of a two-horse race. Usually the PWI 500 doesn't really catch me by surprise in terms of who's number one. Sometimes it's controversial, but I like the fact that we were in a year where it's like the two big wrestling companies have these two dominant champions, and it's which one of these guys is number one. And I really like that there was that dynamic for it. I have no problem with it being Kenny Omega, because if we're going to tell the story of pro wrestling in 2021, I know it's probably going to piss some people off, but AEW was the hotter company in 2021. If we were to look at these two companies and how they're kind of going about their business right now in terms of from creatively, in terms of critically acclaimed, whatever you want to call it. But I do think that Kenny Omega just edged Roman Reigns. And I like that number three was the next world champion, Bobby Lashley. And I really love the first time in the history of the PWI 500, Lashley and Rich Swann top 10, first time two black men in the top 10. So I like seeing that. And I just like the fact that this reflects that it's the year of the dominant world champion. We saw a lot of champions, whether it was Kenny Omega, Bobby Lashley, Roman Reigns. They've all been kind of dominant champions, and they're all in the top three. So a very good encapsulation of what 2021 was in pro wrestling.
And it's all a matter, again, it comes down to criteria. It comes down to what are we basing on? It's the famous you can, who's your Mount Rushmore? Well, are you talking about who drew the most money? Are you talking about who put on the best 5-star matches? And I think I look at it as, Kenny Omega, you can make the case, the number one bell to bell wrestler. But I will say Roman Reigns is the number one character, and the story that has been the story that's been built around him as the tribal chief, and just the overall in the last 12 months with him since he returned and had Paul Heyman by his side and doing this heel run. I think he's number one if you want to go on that. But PWI is more traditional, looking a little bit more also at number of matches, the wins, loss, the bell to bell performance. They're taking character, of course, in consideration. But I can see Omega edging out Roman for that reason. But in my mind, out of 500, there ain't no shame of being number two, quite frankly.
No, absolutely not. No. You could have done worse. Could have done a lot worse. But no, it's great. It's always a fun time, that PW 500. I always like the discussion. And now we have that added dynamic of AEW versus WWE, so it makes those arguments a little bit more spicy. I love that.
Yeah, because if you're part of the 500, great. Because then there's hundreds more, hundreds, maybe even thousands more wrestlers who are like, oh, I must be 501 then. They just didn't print my name.
I've had wrestlers tell me, oh, brother, I was 502, but they just didn't make the final cut.
Yeah.
But it's good to see. And what I love about the PWI 500 is a lot of wrestlers who maybe you've never heard of, you'll see on the PWI. It's how I find out about new guys every single time in terms of, oh, let me check this guy out on YouTube. I don't think I've really heard of this person, or I've seen this guy's name before, but I don't really think I've seen him work. So that's a good thing about it.
Yeah, go back to PWI's 500 list like to 4 or 5 years ago, and you were going to find a ton of names. You're going to go, oh, they're on AEW now, or oh, they're in NXT, So yeah, it is a fun way to kind of, especially if you get down in the second half of the list, it's a fun way to kind of try to, it's a fun way to look at it. It's your own tape trading way to quickly figure out who is it you have not discovered yet that you need to discover. All right, let's get into AEW Dynamite again, coming from Cincinnati, Ohio tonight. So built very heavily around the fact they're in Cincinnati. Jon Moxley's advertised in the main event. We're also going to get another big Cincinnati centralized aspect of booking of where they are. later on in this show. But we kick it off with Malachi Black taking on Dustin Rhodes. Of course, the feud with the Rhodes family continuing. And I got to say, you know, they worked Dustin's leg in this match, those lethal Malachi Black kicks. Dustin got a little bit of face paint, you know, the half face paint in Alfred. Of course, you know, Dustin's legit 6'6". He's taller than Black. So, I mean, he looks like a formidable opponent. And this is, you know, this was the most contested, you know, the most opposition Black got. I mean, he borderline basically squashed Cody, and he's been pretty decisive in other matches. So this was the most he was really challenged by Dustin. In the end, though, Dustin is going to get some blood, and Black's going to win with a spinning heel kick. But you know, overall, I thought this was a solid opening contest, and of course Black pulled out Cody Rhodes' boot from under the ring at one point. So it's just a matter of when we get Cody Rhodes to return, and then you know what kind of return match we are going to get eventually between Cody and Black.
Well, it looks like that's going to be at Flushing Meadows. I believe they're going to have it on the 22nd. So it's, I think that might be the reason that they had such a competitive match, because like you're setting up the final boss, Cody. But I agree. I really would have preferred Malachi Black to just lay out Dustin Rhodes. But I will say Dustin's just been fantastic in terms of as a professional wrestler, from the promo that he cut on Rampage. And I just think he is very good in there. There's no slight against Dustin. I just would have preferred the story of Malachi Black absolutely just slaughtering the Nightmare Factory and then getting to Cody Rhodes. And I really do think he should win that match. He's a guy who I think they've done such a good job with him. You can't pay that crowd to boo him. Like, he's supposed to be this monster heel, but these people were chanting for Malachi Black. And yeah, it did get 50-50 at one point, but this guy is really being presented. I don't know what they're going to have to do, but they're going to have to come up with more ways to try to get this guy booed. But other than that, I think he's just been fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, there's a short list of people who really can get the overwhelming chorus of boos all the time. I mean, obviously MJF's right there on top of the list.
As we saw tonight too.
As we saw tonight, which we'll get to. But yeah, I agree. I would have no problem. It would seem kind of, oh, Cody's going to come back. He's going to tie it up and beat Black, get some revenge. And now we're at 1-1. Maybe we get a tiebreaker, rubber match. But yeah, I'm all for kind of swerving it and have him, let Cody take Black a little bit further to the limit and have a little bit more of a falsie, of a near fall. But I agree. Keep the win streak going for Malachi Black. Nathaniel Cook, $4.99. Thank you, Nathaniel. Says AEW is a great alternative from WWE, but I do hope they continue to build around their homegrown stars, MJF, Sammy Guevara, Darby Allin. Love you guys. I love you too, man. Thank you very much. And look, all signs point towards those three, as you name right there. Those three are being worked in to work with the new arriving stars that have credibility from elsewhere. So yeah, those three are definitely ones that it doesn't seem like they're going to be, they're not being dropped off. They're not being forgotten. They are, they're elevating themselves up to the highest level they've ever been in their careers thus far. So that is good.
In long term, they're going to have to build around some of the homegrown stars. I think, the free agents like the Stings of the world that you're seeing, even the CM Punks and Daniel Bryans that are coming in, their job is to kind of push forward, as they've even said in promos, push forward this current generation. So eventually I think AEW is going to get to a point, hopefully within the next 5, maybe even 10 years, but probably closer to 5, where it doesn't feel like it needs as many as these guys who would, I guess, be called part-timers or people who aren't going to wrestle every week and be part of that homegrown full-time staff.
Big propaganda wrestling podcast, $4.99, says MJF versus CM Punk on the microphone would be gold. We heard both of them on the microphone, and I do think that is one that's on the list that they are going to build to. But I think that is a key timing spot. That is we wait until we get around to a certain big show to do that. I think you have a lot of things with MJF to do. You have an eventual split maybe with Wardlow, and of course you have what we saw with MJF that transpired tonight that we'll get to. CM Punk also on the mic, and Alfred, we talk about homegrown stars of AEW being built and elevated by guys like Punk. Well, it looks like we're going to go down that avenue right now as Punk comes out, very certainly not scripted. You can tell, very off the cuff kind of promo. He shouts out Cincinnati, shouts out John Moxley, shouts out Linda Pillman, who's there ringside, Brian Pillman's mom, shouts out Ruby Soho, Adam Cole, Bryan Danielson, and he asked the fans, who's next? Who should be next for CM Punk? And as everybody's chanting names, all of a sudden Taz, who's on commentary tonight, he grabs a mic and interrupts, and he starts to try to be polite, and then things get amped up. Punk doesn't like being interrupted, and then Taz starts to get hot and starts to say, don't ever name anybody from keep them out of your mouth. And Punk's like, I didn't say any of your guys. And Taz kind of defends it as, I've heard you say it on interviews and this and that. Keep their names out of your mouth. Ultimately, though, here comes Powerhouse Hobbs and Hook. They're standing by Taz, and Punk says, fine, let's do it. Go ahead and send Hobbs. Send Hook.
Let's
Give me
go.
Ricky Starks.
Let's go.
And then he drops him with the send them all. Beat me if they can. Survive if I let them. Of course, that's Taz's famous catchphrase if you're unfamiliar. Alfred, did you like this?
I did like it. Listen, it was a left turn. I'm sure a lot of people were surprised. I especially loved Taz and how he was in this segment in terms of he kind of hinted towards it was this offhand, and I thought it was real, where he kind of got hot at Tony Schiavone because Schiavone suggested that CM Punk was the one who sold out Flushing Meadows, and Taz like, well, we've got a whole roster of guys. What do you mean CM Punk? And so I thought it was really good that then led to Taz calling out CM Punk, where he just kind of worked himself up into a shoot a little bit. But I loved that. And I do like the fact that CM Punk is now going to, for the foreseeable future, work with lesser known talents, because I'm sure it's going to lead to something. I'm sure between now and the next pay-per-view, CM Punk will have some big program with one of the name brand people who've already been established. But I absolutely love that they're doing this with Team Taz. The thing about Team Taz is they're like a high-end Washington Generals, where they've never really been consistent with Team Taz. They always kind of feed them to big stars, and that's what I kind of expect to happen here. But I do love the fact that CM Punk, which is a big name right now in pro wrestling, is going to be working with, especially guys like Ricky Starks and Will Hobbs. I just feel like are a couple matches or programs away from really getting their feet wet. And, I hope Will Hobbs beats CM Punk clean so I can get all that smoke in my DMs.
Yeah, I got to say, I thought the Taz getting hot was a little bit too manufactured of anger. Like it was like, I mean, I don't know if Punk was supposed to, like, Punk should have, I mean, I know he was naming, like, a lot of them were guys and girls that just showed up, but, he probably should have said a Ricky Starks name or something, because they did seem just really random for Taz to say, or if you're not going to name Team Taz guys, have Taz get on the mic and say, what? Screw Adam Cole, screw Mox, screw, you better be recognizing Team Taz. It just, the route they went was kind of whatever. But all that aside, Team Taz has been a little flat up to this point, but I think that's why they are the right reason to let Punk put some shine and give a little rub to them. Because, then we would see Hobbs in a match here in a minute. And, I mean, Powerhouse Hobbs, he just looks it. He's got this strength. Obviously, Ricky Starks has got charisma for days. So it's like Team Taz, the package, hasn't been the most, fluid and consistent thing. And it's been a little stop and go at times. But the participants in it, namely Starks and Hobbs, have certainly got bright futures. So, I'm all for that being a direction that we go for Punk here for the foreseeable future. And I'm all for him working with even Hook, who, I don't know where Hook's at we haven't seen Hook have a mat or.
No, I don't think we have. He's just done a couple of suplexes. He's very good at going viral for whatever his hair looks like or what he's wearing. There's something to that kid to where whenever he's on camera, people want to talk about him. So once he starts actually wrestling, maybe it'll be better too. Yeah,
I stopped because I didn't know maybe if he had wrestled on Dark Elevation. I missed it, but he's definitely not wrestled on Dynamite. So Punk working with all of them, had a little bit of a gauntlet style going through all of Team Taz. I have no problem with that. So we'll see how that starts to unfold here in the coming weeks. We get a Ruby Soho promo. She's interrupted by Britt. There's a nice little back and forth war of words between these two, as Ruby says Britt's got all these nicknames because she wants to disguise what she's not. And then Britt which is she's not the baddest bitch on the block, and Ruby says it's my block now. And then Britt starts talking about you call yourself the runaway or whatever it is. Oh, why don't you go run away to catering? That's where you've been the last 4 years. So
got her. Pew, pew, pew. Oh, you ain't got to do it like that.
So this obviously Ruby and Britt eventually gonna have a match after this past Sunday's stipulations, but Ruby's gonna have a match later on against Jamie Hayter. So that kind of gives a little juice to that one to look forward to.
This is very good. This is very good. I wish this is one of those things, if we're going to go the WWE AEW comparison, the promos between the women in AEW always seem more legitimate they always seem more scripted with women in WWE in terms of they're trying to figure out how women talk. And this was just a good back and forth. The Britt barred her up, and Ruby Soho is very good babyface, and I'm very excited for this feud. Yeah,
me too. All right, so we get Powerhouse Hobbs. He's out in the ring up against Dante Martin. This has got a lot of a little things are off time. I don't know. Some things seem sloppy, but then they did settle in. We saw some great power spots by Hobbs. Most notably, Dante's going to go. Hobbs on the outside. Dante's going to go try to do a suicide dive through the middle rope, and Hobbs catches him perfectly. And Martin's feet are still dangling on the ropes, and Hobbs is just slinging him around against the ring post, slinging him into the guardrail, just looking like a beast. Really looked apart. He eventually is going to win with a power slam after a match. It's going to go 2 segments here. So Powerhouse Hobbs, again, after this match, I was even more like, yeah, give me a Powerhouse Hobbs and a CM Punk. What, that's I don't even know what to expect out of that. So this was a really good showing of Powerhouse Hobbs, who obviously needed to look strong after the Taz CM Punk segment just a few minutes earlier.
Yeah. The only criticism that I would have made in terms of coming out of Team Taz getting a shot at CM Punk is like, well, why should we believe in these guys? You can't just have CM Punk just be fed Team Taz and they don't even look strong in some sort of way. But then you saw Will Hobbs immediately look great in that match. I thought Dante Martin looked great too. I thought a lot of the good action was during the picture-in-picture. They had a lot of cool spots that they, didn't let up just because they're on commercial. And I just really like the fact that they built up Team Taz, they built up Will Hobbs for the time being, and this will at least add some juice to what CM Punk is doing over the next few weeks.
Absolutely. Well, a lot of people might be excited about Adam Cole, Bryan Danielson, CM Punk, Ruby Soho, all named in this next promo. While everybody else can be excited, Dan Lambert is not. He's up in the skybox with Scorpio Sky and Ethan Page flanking him. And Dan Lambert name drops all of those new arrivals here in AEW and says, oh, yeah, a bunch of skinny dorks. And all you people want to chant AEW and you think that this is the greatest wrestling company in the world, but you're just fooled. Yeah, and I mean, just cutting the promo here. I mean, and I think Siobhan even says that, a delusional old man who's just mad at the world. And the Dan Lambert heel, him and MJF, man, they're right there.
I think he's great. He's talking about all these little. Listen, man, he's not wrong. He's not 100% wrong. Like, that's the thing about Dan Lambert that makes him such a great heel. It's like these are valid points. Now, are they extreme? Are they a little, toxic? Is it the right way to go about it? In terms of a heel, no, and that's why he's so great about it. That's why he's such a great heel, is he's good at coming off obnoxious. And I am very interested in the Men of the Year and where they go with this. Because, he can only cut so many promos before they have to start wrestling and getting into actual storylines. But I can watch this guy do this every single week. And this was a one-take live promo by Dan Lambert once again, and he just absolutely killed it.
Yeah. And he keeps teasing, like, looking for real men, looking for a tag team. Who's going to come challenge these guys? Where does that lead to? I mean, is there somebody already in house that we're not thinking of? It's going to step up.
They attacked Lance Archer, so I'm guessing Lance will come with somebody, or he'll try to take him on himself, and that'd be some good shine to the Men of the Year while protecting Lance Archer by having them beat him 2-on-1. So, you could say that they beat Lance Archer, but it is 2-on-1. But that's the last time there was any physicality, is they attacked Lance Archer, and they haven't really followed up on that.
Yeah, I have to wait and see. But yeah, the Dan Lambert stuff, you're right. And that's the thing. One take, people don't have, I mean, he had an earpiece and he had an IFB, but I don't think he was being fed lines. I think he was actually, because he's up in the skybox, I don't think and the camera was obviously not in the skybox. It was a camera that was shooting from somewhere else in the arena. I think the earpiece was to act as a producer to tell him time-wise, like, wrap it up. We got to get out. Incredible stuff by Dan Lambert, who's really settling in his role. Sean Wiley, $10. CM Punk setting with Taz's group is Dan Lambert. I love his promos, but what's the end game for his group? And I really think Ricky Starks should end up with the Acclaim. The egos would click. So, a lot of things to consider in the fantasy booking there, Sean. Well, if Dan Lambert was able to get heat, MJF says, hold my beer. So MJF comes out with Wardlow behind him. Fans, of course, riding MJF, chanting, "You tapped out." Of course, he tapped out. Has loses Chris Jericho on a Sunday. MJF does the Ric Flair heel thing. I didn't actually lose. I won, and then there's extreme bias against me. Match gets restarted. The whole thing. Yeah, that's what I love. That's great old fashioned heel tactics, Alfred. Yeah. You could lose and lose and lose, and then somehow you always end up on the winning side of things. Or it's like Ric Flair held the title for how many years, and he never won the match somehow. It's always a thing of beauty. So MJF really kind of skirts out of this one, but then he starts to really just shit on Cincinnati. He's just running down Cincinnati, the people in it, and then the teams. He then calls out Linda Pillman. Linda Pillman, the mother who raised Brian Pillman Sr., Brian's daughter, Brian Pillman Sr.'s daughter, who was pregnant, is there. And MJF just starts to going after her being pregnant, the baby's daddy, calling her 16 and pregnant. And then interrupted now by Brian Pillman Jr., who's on the stage while MJF's back in the ring. And, Pillman Jr.'s obviously trying to put over his city, put it over being a place that breeds toughness. And then MJF takes a step further and calls Pillman Jr.'s mom, whose name's Melanie, Methany, I believe is what, and And then that sends Pillman Jr. to the ring. Wardlow's trying to stand in the middle. They keep talking. And finally, they get physical, and Wardlow, having been verbally berated by MJF, also Wardlow's kind of conflicted whether or not he should even help MJF, but he does pull Pillman off of him. And so there's so much to unpack here. Obviously, we continue to tease the issues of Wardlow and MJF, so that's that, but that's got a long way going. The thing is Pillman Jr., right? Pillman Jr. is going to get a match at the Arthur Ashe show on the 22nd against MJF, as we'd find out. First off, do you like this spot? Do you like that for everybody you could have MJF fight at this big show in Queens? Do you like it being something new in a Brian Pillman Jr.?
Yes, I do. I absolutely do like it, especially after this segment. If you were to tell me before we saw this segment that that's what's going to happen, that would not be my answer. I'd be like, well, that seems a little weird. It seems a little early to just be heating Brian Pillman Jr. up. But I think they gave Brian Pillman Jr. a small opening to just kind of hit this one out of the park, and that's exactly what he did. And I think he really established himself as a very viable babyface. And just seeing the babyface promo he cut, he seemed like, obviously he was in his hometown, he was in Cincinnati, he was going to get that support, but it's no easy feat to do what he did. It could have easily come off as corny, but he did a great job as like a fiery babyface against what was, MJF was just showing off as a heel, just showing all the different ways he can get heat. I can make fun of the city and get cheap heat. I can make fun of the opponent. I can make fun of his mom. I can make fun of my bodyguard. And he was just doing it in different ways. And then for him to play off of Brian Pillman Jr., I thought this was really good for Brian Pillman Jr.
Yeah, I like the spot. I like the push for Pillman Jr. I like the fact the audience and his crowd stayed with him. But I got to be honest, looking at this as a whole, MJF is out there berating Linda, berating Pillman Jr.'s sister. And like Pillman Jr. comes out and cuts like this return to hometown promo. I'm like, okay, right, that's fine. And then MJF takes it a step further and disrespects his mother's name and alludes to a drug issue. Like at that point, and then now Pillman Jr. charges the ring, and Wardlow stops him. And again, we had to serve the storyline of the Wardlow MJF thing. But to me, I was just like, it took way too long for Pillman Jr. to get to attempt to get physical and actually get physical. Yeah. Like, to me, it should have been, especially by the Metheny line, no Wardlow or anything is standing in between you and MJF. You are getting, get to MJF, get some serious shots, and let Wardlow then pull. I don't know. But, like, I felt like at the end of it, I was like, I don't know. I feel like Pillman Jr. looks like he got a little punked here.
Now, I will say, and I would go do you one better in terms of him attacking, it did stick out like a sore thumb that he didn't do it immediately. Like, the guy's making fun of your mom on national television. Before he even gets to that line, I was thinking when you hear his music, he was going to come out there looking for blood. But the thing that I didn't like about the segment is that he came out and he was like trying to get the fans on his side. Given how serious that this is, how personal MJF had gotten to this point, I don't think it was very wise for him to come out there celebrating like that. And yeah, I can definitely see your point there. But I did think, for the most part, I thought Brian Pillman did look good in terms of how he came off in the segment. And I like they try to at least explain why he wasn't getting physical at that point by having Wardlow step in there. I think it did make Wardlow look good. But yeah, he could have done that much earlier. Yeah,
so MJF... Nothing out of bounds. It seems there in that promo. MJF getting some real
joke and everything.
Yeah, some real crazy heat. And that's not as common. And some of it is, some of it is just, or a lot of it, I think, is guys. A lot of guys don't want to be true heels. They want to be heels for that 20 minutes they're told to go out there, but they still want to sell merch, and they want to be talked about positively on social media, and they want to be asked for pictures, and like MJF lives it. He does. He sticks to it. He lives it. Immediately. Some people even argue too far. He's made kids cry at meet and greets. I mean, he is not afraid to be hated in a time where most people want to play bad guy, but they don't actually want to live bad guy.
Yeah, I don't think it's a coincidence that he's one of the biggest stars in the business. That type of commitment usually has good results if you're talented, which he is.
Got Nathaniel Cook back at it, $1.99. He says, more impactful to wrestling, Alfred, Ring of Honor or ECW?
An interesting question. If you're going to give AEW all this credit, you have to give Ring of Honor credit, because not only did they kind of steal their whole model in terms of having All Out with Ring of Honor's resources, and then coming here and to this day, signing a lot of guys who made their names in ROH. So I think to the modern day, ECW is like what ECW was to WCW in terms of, or ROH is like what ECW was to WCW in terms of them kind of taking their talent. But I think ECW, in terms of the grand scheme of things, because the direction that WWE was kind of forced to go in because of ECW, really led to its biggest period. I think ECW is just doing a lot of wild, outlandish things that are still just cult favorites, and I think it'll take time for us to remember ROH like that, if ever.
Yeah, Ring of Honor really seems like they were the ones that got booted from the cool kids table, huh? Yeah. I mean, like here we are, AEW, you know, the new cool kid in town with all the fancy cars and getting all the and throwing all the best parties, and they're inviting and sharing the drinks and snacks with Impact, and they're sharing and snacks with New Japan, and you know, even to a lesser extent with MLW in some ways, you know, that's how they got Pillman Jr. You know, but there's Ring of Honor, you know, Ring of Honor. They see the Bucks and Cody and all of their guys get free from Japan, and oh, we're going to start this revolution here in the States, and oh, we might even have a financial backer to help do this, and let's do the ROH model for the all and ROH things. All right, we're going to war with WWE. Nope, you guys can go over there. We got this.
Yeah, we'll call you. Don't call us. That's exactly kind of what happened. It was kind of, you know, Gary Jester, God bless him, helped them and gave him all the secrets. And I remember saying at one point, I said something along the lines of like, I hope these guys are under contract. I hope they're signed, you know, because, you know, I hope it's not just like a handshake deal. They're getting all this resources, and, you know, there was some pushback like, oh, stop being so cynical, which that is a cynical thing to say. But that's exactly what I was kind of afraid of for ROH, is that then these guys would turn around knowing how the sausage is made and go make their own sausage.
Make their own sausage. Nightmare Knee, $20. The only discrepancy that I see is the ex-WWE guys come across so much more polished than anybody else with the exception of MJF and a Britt Baker. It's the only thing that bothers me sometimes, but I love this company. Yeah, I mean, there's some fairness to that, Nightmare Knee. I mean, certainly the ex-WWE guys, for the most part, have just had more live TV experience. And I know some fans who might not care about that or might not have ever worked in, you know, TV or any type of form of media might not understand what that means, but there is something to understanding, like, especially timing. Live TV is timing is I mean, because, you know, they don't have an overrun. You see it. They are off hard at 10 and they got TNT as a movie or whatever program after the fact. Like, so, you know, timing is a big thing. And if you run long early on the show, you need to compensate that, because you damn sure don't want your main event to get shortchanged. So, you know, I think there is something to that. WWE guys do know where to look. They know where cameras are. They know, you know, how to slow it down and let a reaction come across on a camera. So I think that is fair. But on the flip side of that, the more of those guys there to that know that, they can help pass that on and help expedite the learning process for a Jungle Boy, for you know, just pick any younger guy who's an AEW homegrown who this is their first live TV go around. So that's part of the advantage of having these veterans in the locker room, is veterans know things and they can pass it on to the next generation.
Yeah, it's a very good point, because now I think about it, the way Adam Cole kind of took his time going to the ring and basking and everything, and I think he does a good job presenting himself. Miro does a good job of that, and of course, Malachi Black's entrance is, I think, one of the best things about AEW right now.
Absolutely. All right, so we get Jamie Hayter. She's up against Ruby Soho, and Soho got the win. She gets attacked from behind, though, quickly by Britt and Rebel, and then Rio and Statlander try to come out to chase off the heels. But I think the thing to note here, Alfred, Ruby's first match, you know, first one-on-one match, and this was a, I mean, this was a, I mean, she didn't. I don't know. I guess again, I expect her to come in and look a little more dominant, but they really gave Jamie Hayter a lot to this.
Yeah, they did. It was a 50-50 match, and there were a couple of kind of blown spots. It wasn't their best work, because I did have high expectations for this one. And I just don't think, even if they did have what I would consider a really good match, I was very surprised at how competitive it was. And I just don't think, in terms of all the enthusiasm about Ruby Soho, that this was the best way to showcase her, because even the backstage segment we were talking about, I thought was very well done. And if we're building toward Ruby Soho and Britt Baker, I don't think this is a match to have. And, you know, even technically how they executed it, unfortunately, wasn't the most smooth match. But, you know, it was very, very weird. I thought it didn't do any favors to her.
No, and I don't know. I don't know. I don't have Jamie Hayter's bio in front of me. I don't know how much experience she has. I don't know. I think she's definitely on the shorter side, or the earlier side of things in her career, which is fine. But, and I get the booking situation and decision. Okay, you're building to Ruby and Britt, so you have Ruby, you know, have to go through Britt's, Britt's posse, Britt's henchwomen, but neither of her henchwomen in Rebel or Jamie Hayter are seasoned veterans bell to bell. So, like, you're right. It's a interesting choice for Ruby's first again, live TV match. It's not like this is on a taped Rampage where you can clean it up or something like that. So, but nonetheless, I think I don't really think it deflated the excitement. I'm still excited to see a Ruby and Britt whenever we get to it. All right, we get a trios match. Sean Spears and FTR up against the Dark Order. Spears and FTR are going to get the win here, but the story is really the Dark Order. The Dark Order, both in an pre-tape interview prior, and then we saw it live in the match of arguing over who's the legal man, and then we saw infighting afterwards. Just the Dark Order, Alfred, cannot get along. They are just at odds with everybody. The ladies, Taya Conti and Anna Jay, are just screaming at them. You bunch of dumb knuckleheads, get on the same page. Dark Order, just they're imploding from the within.
Just in time for Hangman Adam Page to come back. I think that's going to be the resolution. I mean, he's not coming back at all for the Flushing Meadows show. Is he going to be long past that?
Well, I don't know. He took time off. Obviously, I think his wife they're expecting a child, so congrats. I don't know what his timeline is, but I tweeted this out. This is the only tweet that I made live about the show. It's kind of my and then I teased to come watch you and I here. The commentary kept putting it over. Dark Order, they're having problems. They're all sorts of chaotic and on different pages, and because of a lack of leadership, they have no leader. Of course, we know we lost, unfortunately, in real life, tragically, that we lost their leader, the Exalted One, and Mr. Brody Lee. So they don't have a leader. Evil Uno's trying to he's like the 18-year-old who's been left to police the house party and police the younger kids, but he's not. They don't really take him seriously. So that's kind of where we're headed. Is there's a lack of leader. I mean, if you want a leader of a cult and you're looking at that free agent pool and you're looking at a guy who everybody knows can make a real life connection to a Mr. Brody Lee and honor his memory, God rest his soul, I had to just put a GIF of Bray Wyatt just doing this. I mean, come on.
It does fit. It does fit to have Wyndham Rotunda join the Dark Order as in his next incarnation. I'm very excited to see wherever he goes. I don't know. I don't even know if his contract will be up by then. I think it's October when Bray Wyatt would be available. And I mean,
it's no compete?
Yeah.
Well, he was released. Even if it is, though, I mean, you could draw this out. I mean, the next pay-per-view is what, in November, I think?
Sure. It depends on how long they're going to draw it out. I would have no problem with Bray Wyatt with the Dark Order. I just think creatively, of all the people who have gotten a chance to let their legs stretch out creatively and do their own things, I think Bray Wyatt is the type of talent who would benefit from it the most. But I don't think it's a foregone conclusion he's going to AEW. It would be fun if he did, but it'd be great if he did, but I just kind of tend to think, I don't know when Hangman Adam Page is coming back or what his timeline is, but it'd be hard to imagine. Maybe he will miss the September 22nd show because it's just around the corner, but if it's not that, maybe it is Bray Wyatt.
Yeah, so Bray was released on July 31st. So with the next pay-per-view being, I think, November 12th or 13th, Full Gear, he would be available by then.
Okay.
If that, in fact, was a hook.
That'd be great.
Just something to keep. I don't know. I just, you're looking at who's synonymous in this day and age to lead a cult. And again, the connection with Brody from their previous incarnations. And I just feel like, I know earlier I'm talking about the bubble and how many talents can he gain, but I mean, the man, I guess we should call him Rotunda, his creative depth is deeper than most this day and age. And obviously, really, we saw bits and pieces of it with his, especially in the last run with the Fiend of his character abilities, but just booking decisions of, we got to have him lose to Goldberg here, or we got to, just decisions that just made you go, what's going on here?
So that's all it was, really.
What I'm saying is I would not fault Tony Khan from writing a big check to get.
No, not at all. That would be a little bit different in terms of them dipping into different waters of former WWE superstars. I mean, I know that they have a lot of former WWE guys, but I consider guys like Adam Cole, whether it's a Kevin Owens who you're hearing rumors about, they're kind of that same dereliction of guys who kind of made their name on the indies, that BTE crew that they're kind of filling up. And I think Wyndham Rotunda would be a different flavor than that.
I mean, the only other cult guy you just associated would be like, I mean, Braun Strowman's out there as a free agent. Yeah, obviously he started in the Wyatt family, but he kind of broke off of that. But I mean, you have Malachi Black if you want. I mean, Malachi Black's one of the few guys in the AEW roster right now who's solo, who he's unattached to any faction or associates. But I kind of feel like the Dark Order's become such baby faces. They went from being the heel lackey, were come recruiting to the dark side, to then obviously we've talked about they got baby faced. Some of it because of the untimely and unfortunate death of Brody, but also just they started just getting over the comedy and their entertainment chops on Dynamite or on some of the web extras. So I kind of feel like when Bray comes, I'm just gonna call him Bray until he's anything else.
Sure, yeah.
When Bray comes in, he's gonna get a pop. This is a guy that just people want to cheer his creativity. So I feel like that would just gel really nicely with the Dark Order.
You'd be perfect. It's the role he was essentially born to play in terms of what the Dark Order is, and if he is going to go to AEW.
Yeah.
I will say, though, Evil Uno has sent some tweets kind of a little salty about the ideas because I'm sure he's been badgered so many times in terms of Bray Wyatt being the leader of the Dark Order that he's kind of sarcastically saying, oh, well, yeah, Bray Wyatt should be our leader. So I don't know how he'll take it, but
wouldn't it be great? Wouldn't it be great if you had like some situation, like some spooky situation of like, we're building, we need a leader. Evil Uno's trying to say I can be the leader, but they're all like resisting against him, and then we get a situation where like all of a sudden, lights and ballyhoo and what have you, and then we see Evil Uno in his suit and his mask, and then lights and ballyhoo, and then we all of a sudden they come back up and we see somebody else dressed exactly like him, suit, mask. Does Evil Uno have an evil twin, and the mask comes off and it's a Bray Wyatt?
Be beautiful.
I don't know. I just booked that live here on the Factor.
Yeah, well, he just booked the biggest pop that they can get. That's amazing.
maybe. All right. So we get the Elite. They come out for an in-ring promo. They introduce Adam Cole. Adam Cole, just as soon as he comes out and he's getting the Adam Cole baby pop, and everybody's happy to see Adam Cole. Adam Cole, he just reverts right into being that little prick. He walks up to Tony Schiavone and says, "You stay away from Britt Baker. Don't you even give her a dirty look, or I'll beat your old ass, you nerd." Calls him a nerd repeatedly, gets him out of the ring. So immediately gets the fans booing on him. Tremendous work.
Phenomenal continuity. Yeah, I wonder how many weeks he's sitting in the NXT locker room watching AEW on his phone, just like if that guy gets too close to Britt Baker. No, but I love that. I love that they did this in terms of they knew he was going to get cheered. They knew he was going to get the Adam Cole baby. So what are we going to do? Not only just go after Tony Schiavone for quote unquote cheap heat, but this is legitimate in terms of this guy is on camera, best friends with Britt Baker, and that is just like you said, a little prick like the bully in high school who was kind of bullying the guy who was friends with a hot girl and his girlfriend. It's a perfect trope for Adam Cole to play.
And I could see them carrying out on being the Elite. I could see like them making a reoccurring thing to where like Adam Cole walks into a room or walks in a hall and like sees Tony Schiavone in a very misunderstood situation. Like looks like Schiavone's going to hug Britt, but he's actually like going to like, whatever. Like I could just see them making like a reoccurring, just for Cole to be a prick heel and just for comedy laughs of the whole dynamic. Well, so Cole,
love triangle storyline between Schiavone and.
Wow, that's not good. That's not good. That's not going to long. Let's just go into misunderstood.
Yeah. Okay.
Real quick, I'll do the super chat real quick. JB 499. In a segment with MJF or Britt or anyone else in that case, you can't let them verbally job you out. Soho and Pillman Jr. has to do better. Promos matter. Yeah, not so much Soho. Ruby's is fine. Look, it's a fact. She was sitting in catering or what have you. So like, you can't. What's the past is the past. So use it to help. If it helps gift some juice behind your match with Britt, that's fine. Again, Pillman Jr., I do think, his family was like really berated. I think that he needed to get, he just needed to get physical faster, but
I agree.
Yeah, that's that. All right, so back to the in-ring. So Cole comes out, he gets some heat now, kicking Schiavone out. He talks about how AEW is the best place in professional wrestling. It is the best, and he says this because all the guys that are in the ring, and he names the Young Bucks. He names Kenny Omega. He doesn't. He leaves out Gallows and Anderson. They're not even.
He didn't say anything about them.
I don't know what that's about, but so Omega then gets back on, talks about how they hate being interrupted. Well, Bryan Danielson interrupts him again. Now Omega excuses the rest of the Elite, tells them to go to the outside of the ring, and now we have Bryan and Omega face to face in the ring. Crowd's going crazy, and Bryan Danielson, saying, "Come on, I want you," and then Omega saying it doesn't work like that here, and Bryan saying it's because you're scared. It's because you think that you're on this level that nobody else is on. And Bryan basically says, I am on the level that you and nobody else is on. And just kind of challenging him verbally right there. And then Brian takes down Omega and quickly gets him in a submission. The Elite jump in. They start beating down on him. Here comes Jurassic Express, Christian, Kazarian, all to try to even the numbers. They eventually chase off the Elite. So certainly a lot to unpack here. After we saw Cole and Jungle Boy kind of pair off for a minute. So I mean, we have singles feuds, evolving out of this. We certainly have a 10-man tag or something burning out of this. So a lot of content, a lot of booking that can be done. It's going to occupy the next few weeks and months. But Bryan Danielson, in the end, it looks like he is going to be one of the next challengers for Kenny Omega. You good with that?
I'm good with that. I guess it's inevitable, but I don't know about how they came about this in terms of Daniel Bryan essentially saying, hey, man, in WWE, we can just cut our way to the top. And Kenny Omega very rightfully saying things don't work like that here. I don't think that's a heel line, that you kind of have to earn your way. We just saw a match with Christian, who had never lost in AEW. That's how he earned his way. And we usually see people go with wins and losses, and if they get more wins, they get the title shot. And so Daniel Bryan just poo-pooed that. Kenny Omega said it doesn't work that way. And these fans turned on him. And they're supposed to be AEW fans. Like, yeah, it doesn't work that way in AEW. But, not to nitpick too much, I'm sure, the match in terms of Daniel Bryan or Bryan Danielson and Kenny Omega is a marquee match. I'm just not sure I liked how they went about this.
Well, again, they do have until November if that would be the spot where they do that match. So, I mean, there's a lot of weeks for Bryan to continue to be denied and continue just to rack up wins.
Right.
So that, again, that could be kind of the deal here, is Bryan's going to earn his way to it. But yeah,
Are they not doing this match on September 22nd at the Flushing Meadows?
They didn't say. I think the only matches they announced for that, they announced again Pillman and MJF.
And then the Cody match.
Did they announce Cody and Black?
I believe they did toward the end.
Okay. Yeah, I would imagine the Arthur Ashe, I could see that being the 10-man tag. I could see that being the two groups that we've seen. I could see Bryan with Jungle Boy, Luchasaurus, Christian, and company versus Bucks, Kenny, and Cole. I could see that. I could see that really being something to build that show around. All right, and finally we get the main event for the local crowd tonight. It is Jon Moxley going up against Minoru Suzuki, who is a longtime veteran. They did a good job trying to give some backstory to him. Of course, you can Google him if you'd like to get some history on him. He's a he worked an MMA career, a very violent pro wrestling career. So this is something we get here. Moxley versus him. Suzuki gets busted open from the right eye. Yeah. And I put emphasis on that because, Dustin Rhodes got busted up and was bleeding the opening match out of his mouth. I don't know if it was what it was, what caused that, and you obviously the famous, you see blood coming from the forehead, but from the right eye, that's some hard way shit there, Alfred.
Yeah, and why not? I mean, this match did, I wouldn't say it needed blood, but based on the brawl that we were promised, it did enhance the match, and that was just an insane visual. And Minoru Suzuki, just like a pro, was just licking his blood and wiping it all over himself. I mean, this was a savage match, and I do think that it kind of leveled up after he was busted open.
Yeah, that's what I mean, because you're right. When you think a match needs blood to help the story, you're like, okay. Usually when there's needed for blood, and if they're going to manufacture blood, where the blood's going to. The right eye is not where it's not where you're looking for blood to come from. So this match, it was what it was. Obviously, Moxley again, a hometown hero. He gets the win, so that is that. They go home with him celebrating in the crowd. Look, they certainly take the alternative compared to WWE. They certainly look at WWE for whatever warped reasons look at hometowns as a weird way to embarrass or humble talent in a way, or piss the audience off, and it's just perpetual heat that never gets a payoff. Of we're gonna bury your hometown person, you're gonna get mad about it, but we're never gonna give you a reason to see payoff. Tony Khan and AEW at least look at it as this is a head start. We're going to a town. We have talent that are from that town, or at least build from that town. We have a head start of getting pops and getting them over. They built Pittsburgh around Britt. And the fact that Wardlow came up here, and they've done that with Texas, they built around Ricky Starks. Chicago, obviously CM Punk. I mean, they Cincinnati. I mean, so I can't fault them that, because again, if you're a new company, if you're a newer company, why would you not? If you're trying to move tickets, why would you not try to get the head start and just position whoever the hometown connection is, and put them in the most favorable spot possible.
That should be a rule of thumb, new or old company. I mean, they're just wasting their opportunity in WWE by insisting on beating people in their hometown, because it's almost like a sport. You have to look at it that way in terms of there's going to be home teams, there's going to be road teams. And the cool thing about people getting over in their hometown is that then when you look on national television and you see a Britt Baker and these people are going crazy for her, yeah, they're in Pittsburgh, but if you're kind of a casual fan on the fence of who these people are, you're looking at that and you're seeing somebody presented as a superstar. And wrestling is a copycat business. So once people start doing the DMDs in Pittsburgh and she gets really over in Pittsburgh and it looks like a lot of fun, the next cities are going to want to do that regardless of if they're in their hometown. And so it's just based on creating stars, and you could do that a lot of times within people's hometown. We see this with Manny Pacquiao, how he's just a god with the Philippines, and that kind of transcends to other areas in the country. And if you do that with each and every single one of your top talent, I think then you're going to be able to build more mainstream stars across the board.
No, for sure. It is one of those alternative things that AEW does that seems so simple, but it's such an alternative because WWE seems to have, just complicated the matter for whatever reason. But yeah, if you got a local person, use them. It's
100%. That's like what the territories were built on. Is that you got to get the guy who, whether it's, that's why they'd have Ric Flair go to certain territories, because they loved him in those places. So he ended up having, like, people think he's from Minnesota, people think he's from the Carolinas, people think he's from Florida, because eventually they would adopt him as a hometown because it became the cool thing based on him in North Carolina to like Ric Flair.
No, that's a great point with Flair. I mean, you build from Charlotte,
yeah,
but then he's just as over in Georgia because of Georgia Championship Wrestling and the NWA foundation there. But then there's talent in South Carolina that are Flairville or Horseman country. But then he's from Minnesota. He's originally from Minnesota. Like, it's just like, I mean, what a way to maximize your local cachet. All right. Well, that was Dynamite tonight. I mean, Alfred, I gotta say, I think this is one of the best Dynamites they've done. I mean, honestly, they were loaded. They had so many bullets in the chamber here. I mean, they had so much to build around, and they crammed again so much in the 2 hours. I think this is one of the best Dynamites, just from you gotta tune in because you want to see what's gonna happen.
And it flew by. It was one of the fastest episodes I ever remember watching, in terms of by the time it was over, I see that Moxley and Suzuki only have 10 minutes. And I was like, wow, like, where did all the other time go? And they really did get from segment to segment without things seeming that they didn't belong. And I past couple of AEW was kind of relaxed and had some stuff that I didn't feel should be on the show, but this was not one of those shows. It really did feel like a good follow-up to what many feel is the best pay-per-view they've ever had.
For sure. It's, it is a crazy time right now. We obviously, this AEW momentum cannot be denied. A new NXT will be unveiled next Tuesday. We've seen the promo. It looks like the promo looks like it's brightening up, and it's got more of almost like a Coliseum kind of feel. If those sketches
kind of like a little bowl theater or something like that.
Yeah.
I'm very interested to see what this looks like, and they're going to let up that show. So we're going to have fun with this on Tuesday.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens there. SmackDown's got momentum too. Let's not be denied. SmackDown has got momentum. They're over 2 million, which that's relatively speaking, that's good. For a Friday night wrestling show, it's live, thank God. But they're doing pretty good, and they got obviously Brock Lesnar. They're in the Garden TV at the Garden this Friday. WWE TV in the Garden, so at MSG. So NXT's got a weird bit of momentum and curiosity, voyeurism of we're all tuning in to see what's this new NXT project that's going on. SmackDown's got momentum. AEW's got momentum. It's just that damn Monday Night Raw.
Raw's dragging everybody down. But and then NFL is coming back pretty soon. I just did my fantasy draft, and I'm ready to defend my title. But it's going to be very tough for Monday Night Raw going head to head with football, because every year it seems to take a little bit of a bite out of that audience, and more of a bite than it did the year before. So I'm a little bit worried about Raw. But I will say you're right about SmackDown, because SmackDown, 2 weeks after that SummerSlam bump, they've maintained that SummerSlam bump. People have not fled SmackDown in terms of that sub 2 million that they're doing. And then they're going to be in the Garden, which I expect to do a very good number. So it's really, SmackDown's quietly building a lot of momentum.
They are. Yeah, you're talking about the NFL. My Washington football team. Hey, look, don't sleep on them. I know they were a subpar team that got to make the playoffs because of the division last year.
No.
But
They're going to be fun.
I think they win the NFC East. All right,
I wouldn't be surprised if they did. I'm heavily invested in this offense. Terry McLaurin is my guy. I love
Scary Terry.
Terry killed it for me. I've had him on my fantasy teams every year he's been in the NFL. And this year I think it's going to be his best. Gibson's coming back, and they got Fitzpatrick, who just doesn't give a you-know-what in terms of throwing it all over the field and getting the ball deep. They're going to be a fun offense to watch. And then, of course, Chase Young is a beast.
Well, yeah, you have Fitzmagic, and then you have Scary Terry. And Scary Terry had been good in his first 2 years, with nobody else really as a threat. But now you add Curtis Samuel, even Adam Humphries. I think they signed from Tampa, who there's just no room for him in Tampa, so he's a pretty good third.
Logan Thomas is going to be a good tight end.
Yeah, I mean, and Fitz has a way of Scary Terry. If you haven't done your draft yet, or if you do the week to week gambling. Don't you look out for Terry McLaurin as a good yardage guy to grab here. I'm Chase Young. I mean, everybody's talking about Aaron McDonald and TJ Watt here in Pittsburgh. Yeah, I know it's only been 1 year for Chase, but Chase Young is going to be in that conversation here after the next year or two if he stays healthy. So
certainly, very excited.
All right, well, all of my Washington football team pandering and gave time for one more super chat. So Raj gets a little bit more money before we sign off. Fethdar, $5 says, I worry about Lashley because Raw sucks, and it's not his fault.
I thought Lashley was actually great, especially Lashley and MVP. I think their pairing was really good. Monday Night Raw kind of felt like they were punting. I mean, there was a lot of tag team wrestling that I thought was, they had some good matches, but it was kind of one story that they were telling the whole show that didn't really advance past second gear until you found out who won. So, Raw is tough, but I do think Lashley and MVP have been a bright spot of Raw.
I agree.
And McIntyre's just been having one great match after another. Sheamus has been working his ass off, and they're making Damian Priest. So they're doing stuff. It's just really hard to get through Raw, and it just doesn't. Sometimes it just seems so disjointed in terms of how it comes across on TV.
Yeah, it feels 2 hours to be easier. It's just hard. Yeah, I mean, like Damian Priest and Riddle are two things to get excited about because you're like, and well, Lashley too. But I mean, Lashley's the champion. But Priest and Riddle, it's like, all right, here is building to the future. These are guys that you start getting excited for potential Mania coming out part. Like, where could they be come Mania next spring? Lashley's doing great work. It's just the 3 hours. It's just too damn long for every single week. Nothing should be 3 hours every week. Nothing.
I agree.
I mean, even NFL games struggle at times trying to have these 3 hours games. With TV and everything else, so
especially some of these Monday night games that they can't flex out of, and you have to see the the Browns and the Dolphins or something like that. Although the Browns are good this year,
we think they're good. I mean,
they might. We'll see.
Here's one thing with the Browns, and I live in Pittsburgh, but I'm not a Steelers fan, so I find perverse joy when the Steelers shit the bed. So when they're down 28-0 to the Browns last year in that game, I'm just howling at hilarity. But I will say, prior to that, for the Browns to get to the they made it harder on themselves. They took it down to the final week of the regular season for them to they could have put it away earlier, and they kind of. So I'm still trying to see all right, are the Browns for real? And you're in an AFC that's really tough. You got KC, you got Buffalo, the Ravens in your own division are still tough despite the running back. So I'm I want the Browns to be good because I kind of feel for them because I kind of feel as a Washington football fan, I can relate to the Browns of just the organization being an embarrassment for so many years of how it's ran. So I want the Browns to be good because they're an AFC, they're not a threat to me, but it's I'm not yet there buying into it.
Yeah. That is one of those kind of old school teams. The NFL will be better because they've never even been to a Super Bowl. So I'm sure it'll be a big story for Cleveland, but we'll see about the Browns. I still, the Packers over the Bills in the Super Bowl, just so I have that on record.
I was going to say, your boy, Aaron Rodgers, he's, it's all kumbaya there. Is it all going to be fine?
Yeah, we're all good. It's the last dance. Aaron Rodgers has got something to prove, and he's never better than when he does. So him and Devontae Adams are going to make magic again.
It's not Fitz magic, but it'll be magic. All right. Well, that's been the Offshoot Football Podcast on the Wrestling Podcast. We didn't really lose much viewership, though, from what I can see. People are still digging into it. So.
They know what's up. They want these tips.
People are taking notes for their drafts.
Exactly.
Taking notes. All right. Well, as long as the Cowboys shit the bed, that's all that matters to me. So we'll tune into that tomorrow night. So, all right, tune into that tomorrow night because there's no podcast tomorrow night. Everybody will be back Friday after SmackDown for a podcast here on Wrestling Inc. Alfred, anything coming up on Forbes we should know about?
Just follow me on Forbes at This Is Nasty. Got some coverage on Rampage's ratings, how they've done since CM Punk, and gonna have some stuff coming to the pipeline this weekend as well. So This Is Nasty, Pro Wrestling Bits on YouTube and on Forbes.
Love it, love it. You can follow me at Justin LaBar. I'll be next live on the airwaves Friday morning on Busted Open Radio, as I am on Sirius XM channel 156 every single Friday. You can listen on your Sirius XM satellite radio, or you can download the app and listen on demand. So if you can't listen right at 10 o'clock when I'm on in the morning, you can catch it whenever. I'm on with Mark Henry and Dave LaGreca. Ought to be a lot to talk about, so I'm looking forward to that. Follow me at Justin LaBar, and we'll be back next Wednesday as all this fun time as a wrestling fan continues here in the world of pro wrestling on Wrestling Inc. Like, subscribe, leave a comment. We appreciate it. That's going to do it. Good night.